Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to learn how to use dynamic fonts in Godot. The first thing we need to do is download a font that we want to use in our project. So I'm going to switch over to the browser, and I've loaded a couple of websites here that you may or may not be familiar with. The first one is Dafont.com. And this is a really great website where people share fonts that they've been working on. And you can see there's all kinds of styles and types, and they have them categorized. Like if you want something here in old school, these are some examples of old school fonts that you can use. If you want something, let's say Gothic medieval for your game, you might choose one of these. If you want something pixel or bitmap related, you could choose something like this. So you get the idea. There's tons of them. What I like to do is come to the top, and then they give you some tools here where if you click on more options, you can find all of the ones that are in the public domain, and you can click submit here and it will sort that and it will find all kinds of examples. So let me show you quickly Google Fonts. And that's just fonts.google.com, and they have all kinds of fonts that are free to use that you can download. And again, you can adjust the size of them so you get exactly what you're looking for. You can filter them by properties, by categories, depending on what type of font you're looking for. You can also, if you just want to see the alphabet, you can change what you're seeing. If you need to see numbers, you can click here and see exactly what the font would look like at that particular size and with that particular kind of content. I'm going to go back over to Dafont and I'm going to download Vervel. So I click the download button and you can see Chrome has downloaded this. So now I'll go to my desktop. I can see here that the zip file has downloaded. So I'm going to double click to unzip that file, and let's take a look in this folder. And you can see here that there are two files. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. It depends on how many weights and styles come with that particular fonts. But you can see here there's a TTF extension, so that means it's a true type font, or an OTF or an open type font. Godot handles both of them, so it doesn't really matter what we use, but that's what we'll be importing into Godot in just a minute. So let me close that, come back over to Godot. Now in my file system, I want to create a folder. I don't have to do this, but just to say organized, I'm going to right click, click new folder, and I'm just going to call this fonts. I'm only doing this just to help me stay organized, and so let me come back over to my Vervel folder, and I'll just take the true type font Vervel script and I'm going to drag it over to my resources panel, and it should download and go right into the fonts folder. Now I have that font file available to me, so how do I apply it to this label? Well, first thing I need to do is select the label, and I'm going to, in my inspector panel, let me make this a little bit bigger, I'm going to say custom fonts, and I'm going to say check that I'm going to use a custom font, and specifically I'm going to use a new dynamic font. Basically what I'm doing here is telling Godot that for this label I want to use a dynamic font. And a dynamic font is one that's embedded in your game. And what's nice about that is you can scale it, you can make it move, you can do all types of things dynamically through code during your game. And so it makes it much more flexible than just the regular label text. So once I've selected this, I'm going to click on dynamic font. And I actually have to specify the font data that I'm going to use. And by default, it's empty. And so what I want to do is load a new dynamic font. And so when I click the load button, I see my resources folder, and I'm going to come into my fonts subfolder. And of course, Vervel script is available to me here. So I'm going to select that and click open. And now that I've selected that font data, what I can do is adjust a number of settings. So this happens to be at size 16, but let's do something quite a bit bigger just to make it a little bit easier to see. So now you can see I have Font Explorer. And you can clearly tell that it's no longer using the default font that goes with the label. I can go up even bigger and it will fit in there and it won't pixelate. It should scale nicely. That's a little too big, so let me go down to 84 or so, just something like this. Excellent. And then if you're going to use 84 sized fonts repeatedly throughout your project, it's a good idea to save this. So come back up to the dynamic font, drop down the menu and click save. And then in your fonts folder, and you could call this whatever you want. I'm going to call it Vervel. And then I am going to remind myself that it's the 84 font size. And I'm just going to save that in my file now. That allows me to reuse it if I want to use it later. So if I save my file and run it, I can see I've got this beautiful dynamic font in there. And let me just come back over. You can see I have the resource of Vervel 84 as well as the entire Vervel script data font file in my fonts folder. And of course, I could do the same thing with using a different size. So that's how you use dynamic fonts in Godot.